as we sort of unpack some of your research here, there's probably a few key terms that we should define. And you've already defined dietary pattern. The other that I'd like to define is this idea of cardiometabolic health. I think that pops up a lot in the literature. It probably pops up in conversation on lots of podcasts, but I'm not sure that everyone fully appreciates what does that mean when we say cardiometabolic health. And when you say that as a researcher and are then investigating this in studies, how would you define that?
So cardiometabolic health, at least from the research that I do, is related to risk factors and conditions that can increase your risk of cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes. So these are specifically risk factors like obesity, overweight. There's dyslipidemia, so that could be high LDL cholesterol, non-HDL, ApoB, low triglycerides, or high triglycerides, low HDL cholesterol. There's blood pressure, blood sugar, and also considering conditions like metabolic syndrome and prediabetes as well.
So cardiometabolic health, you're sort of measuring that through those biomarkers, or whether it's looking at body weight or waist circumference, or the biomarkers like triglycerides or ApoB, blood pressure, etc. And so if someone has good cardiometabolic health, we're saying essentially they don't have cardiovascular disease, they're at low risk of cardiovascular disease, of say having a heart attack or a stroke. They presumably don't have insulin resistance, prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, and some of these other conditions like sort of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Would that be a fair summary of someone that has good cardiometabolic health?
Yes, definitely. And I think another point with that would be having those risk factors low without taking medications as well.
So, and then it's a bit of a spectrum. So as some of those biomarkers start to shift into a more unfavorable direction, we're increasing our risk of developing those conditions, or we have those conditions that you mentioned and I just sort of summarized.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say an important point about cardiometabolic health is that the current research that we have, I think there was a study looking at NHANES, so that's a population study in the US that showed that only 7% of Americans have optimal cardiometabolic health.
Okay. And so your research is very much looking at how do the dietary choices we make and the overall dietary pattern that we adhere to over a long period, well, particularly, I guess, more so in the epidemiology, the studies where you have data that comes from years and years, decades of someone's lifestyle. Does nutrition affect these biomarkers and the risk of these conditions? That's really at the sort of heart of what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. So nutrition is probably one of the top risk factors for these diseases, and it is the cornerstone of prevention and management of cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes. So it is a really important part of having good cardiometabolic health.